Creating a consistent process, transforming your organization. The objective of this lesson is that by the end of this video, you should be able to discuss why a consistent process is beneficial. You can decide what tasks are repeatable and design a process to standardize the client experience, and then implement a process that you can put into your workflow. The first step in preparing for this is to think about your daily routine. What services does your firm offer? What do your meetings have in common? What do you use over and over again that you'd like to have prepared in advance so it's easy to put it together when you have a meeting? So think about what templates that you could create to have something already ready so that you're spending time with your client and somebody else can put this packet together for you. Now you want to divide these tasks into modules. It makes it really easy to mix and match and customize them for whatever client experience that you're trying to replicate. So you might have something for prospecting, something that you use when you're setting up client events. Maybe it's a map to the location that you always use, or parking instructions, or an invitation template, or maybe when you schedule your appointments, you have a follow-up reminder that you can put together and it's already worded, and you just plug in that particular client's name and save time when you do it. Any standard work routines that you do over and over is an ideal candidate for one of these modules. So even think about your client events and all the touches that you have planned, and maybe you can put these into modules because maybe you repeat once a year a particular event that you love to do, and you could have all of the materials together and you just update them, which makes it really easy and helps to make sure you don't forget anything. Now you want to customize your message because, again, you want your branding to be reflected in everything you do. So it should reflect your value proposition. This is a good time to review all the materials you use and make sure that it really shows you in your best light. Your service set should be reflected in the materials you provide your client. They need to feel and touch and understand what you're doing for them. You want to standardize these work processes the best you can because it allows you to take on more revenue enhancing tasks and not have as many administrative things at the last minute. So maybe there's a client education package. Maybe you have something prepared when somebody's approaching the time that they take required minimum distributions, and you can explain how they work in an education package. Maybe it's a client that is going to contribute to their individual retirement account, and maybe you have a packet that explains what they can do and how they can do it and some of the rules. Whatever it is, put something that you know you're going to explain over and over and have that ready as a client education package. And when the subject comes up in the meeting, you can provide it to the client. Any tools, any worksheets that you're going to use on an ongoing basis are ideal to be part of this. Now, once you've identified this, you want to design it. You want to put it into your workflow. You're going to put a marketing system together that incorporates these tools. Your website should reflect what you're using as far as your branding and some of the service that you've put together so that everything has a consistent look and feel. Your newsletter, again, should also carry this message. Think about your storybook. This is going to be what you use to tell your story. So you want to customize a PowerPoint for your practice. You want to prepare yourself and your staff to tell this story. So they should be able to tell it as well as you can. So when they interact with the client, everybody is on message. You want to create a client experience map. And this is so valuable because it helps the client understand what you're going to be doing for them. It helps them see your value, and it helps them get excited about some of the events you've got planned. Maybe you ask them to bring prospects with them. They can tell their friends that you have a great seminar coming up and save the date. So whatever you can do to put this into a client experience map will help them not only see what you're doing for them, but help them feel comfortable on what they're buying when they buy you. Then you want to tell your staff on where those tools that they are going to be using to implement this are located. They want to know what deliverables are used for each of these things, when the follow-up that you'd like to see, maybe it's an appointment reminder, when that should happen and what should happen during that period. And then assign responsibilities. Now, we've talked about branding, but again, as a reminder, it should reflect your value proposition. You should add it to all of your client-facing materials. And it creates a professional impression that look how prepared you are, look how on top of everything you are, how detailed you are. That's a great message to give to somebody who is asking you to mine their money. And it also helps the client tell your story, because when they talk about you, everything that you've done is coaching them along. So when they tell their friends who ask about who they have as a financial advisor, they can tell your story too. Now, as many of these things that you are putting into a consistent process, you're going to be using technology. And when you take advantage of that, don't overlook training. You want to put it out there for everyone to learn how to use this. You don't know when you're not going to be there to oversee it. You want to be able to ask somebody to use that software later if something comes up. So you want to train yourself as well as your staff, and then a resource list, because if something goes wrong, if something locks up, if you can't find something in the program that you want it to do, who do you call? Where do you get help if you need help on that particular software? And then create a document into your workflow routine that explains these processes and who to call. So again, it can be accessed when it's needed. New client welcome kits are really valuable. Again, it's a branding message, it's your story. Everything is in a nice professional package that again talks about your value proposition. They can reread it, they can share it. You want that as part of your kit. You want to talk to them maybe how to use your website, because if you're going to engage them and use that as some of the touches, you want them to know how to log in, what is special if you add updating content in a blog or something. You want to let them know that so that they know to go there. There might be a new client onboarding sheet that you use, a little checklist of things that you need from them. Put that part of the kit so that they have it already. They know what they need to bring to their next meeting. You might want to diagram their experience so they know your process and your steps, so they know what to expect next, and that you have thought of a very detailed process to walk them through the solution that they've asked you for. You want to include your pricing schedule. So again, if there's additional services that you charge for or things that are included, you've created that expectation, and they understand that that's what your clients pay for that service. And then discovery questions. So if they're going to engage you for a financial plan, those questions that you need to find out more about them are included in this welcome kit. You might want to consider using scripts. Not to read something verbatim necessarily to a client, but it's really helpful to make sure that everybody is conveying the same message. So it's very valuable for your value proposition. That is important to make sure everyone gets right. But it also sets some expectations. So if you detail out what happens when, that's great to create a client experience that's repeatable. You want to educate your team on the use of tools, and having a process like that is really a helpful thing. If a client needs something and you ask somebody to do it and they've forgotten because they haven't looked at that in a while, it's great to have it. And then maybe a new client 45-day checklist. What happens in 2 weeks? What happens in a month? What happens in 45 days? So that you have a little bit of an idea of what to send a client when. Now, in your initial meeting, you're going to customize whatever you need for that particular client situation. You're going to have that kit. And I really like to have an agenda. I think not only does that tell the client that where we are in the meeting and what you're going to accomplish during that time together, but if you can send it out a day or two ahead when you reconfirm the meeting, then the client can look it over, and if they have another question that you haven't included, they can respond to you and say, I'd really love for you to talk about this too. And then you have time to prepare and research it and be prepared to answer that question when it's posed at their meeting. And of course, you want to have your branding and your credentials, anything again that they want to walk away to know that they're hiring an experienced professional. So in the packet, maybe the data capture tool that you're using, discovery questions as we've mentioned before, maybe there's an asset and a risk guide. We talked about the website and online instructions. There might be a financial planning checklist, the welcome kit, the client experience checklist, and most importantly, the engagement form. Now, you want to set the stage so that when a client comes into your office, somebody knows how to prepare that meeting for the client. So it could be that the tissue box is there, there's pen and papers provided, each participant has a copy of the agenda, there's something for the next appointment to give them a card like you get at the doctor's office to remind them when their next appointment is if they don't have their calendar with them. Maybe it's parking validation, maybe it's a pitcher of water. Whatever you have should be set up in advance so that you don't have to stop the meeting mid-story because you need something. And again, it sort of gives a familiarity when a client comes in. It's a comforting thing to see things that they are used to seeing when they sit down and meet with you. So then your outcome. You're going to talk about in your process what's going to happen next. So you're going to decide with this prospect whether they're a fit for you or not. You'll want to follow up with a thank you letter, and so you want that note prepared in some way, even if it's going to be handwritten. They know when a prospect comes in that they can pre-address the envelope for you. They can have the thank you note ready. You have a version that you follow as far as thanking somebody who's not a good fit or one that you've engaged. And then you don't have to sit there with writer's block and decide what to say. And then the things you send them away with, if you decide to engage them, have that all prepared. For the financial planning client, a little kit for that too. So maybe the client already has a financial plan, and while you've reviewed it, they're just coming to you for asset management, or they're coming for you for another specific service you offer. You have kits for everything. So your financial planning kit might talk about what happens in the process when you gather the data, when you go through their investments, when you transition their holdings to your platform, what's going to happen at the second meeting, what kind of agenda will they have at the follow-up when you go over the materials. Again, helping them understand that they're needing to come back and talk this over with you. It moves them along in the process. When you deliver the plan, you should have a customized process for that as well. So maybe there's slides that you use when you talk about the overview of their plan. Maybe you have a customized binder that you deliver your plan in. There's maybe a branded envelope that you put all of the materials that they've given you to give back to them. There's an action plan and the way that you present that to stand out, to show them what you're going to do and when. If there's forms required to transfer assets to you, you have that all prepared, and that packet of forms is already ready and customized for them. And then you add this client to your marketing touch points. So you have a process that at the end of the plan that they're added to your newsletter mailing list or your client invitation list or whatever it is, so that again you don't forget to do something as important as that. You have certain forms that you have to use for different solutions. Have that prepared so that somebody else that's pulling these forms together that doesn't know off the top of their head what they're doing to assist you can pull those forms easily. And you have somebody who's in charge of those materials to make sure that they have what you need, and they get more if you're running low. You prepare your marketing touch points, and somebody is responsible for that. So you're going to train a team member, and maybe you have a client welcome sign. Maybe you use something to welcome them every time they come into the office. So somebody's in charge of making sure that happens. There'll be special situations where you're not going to use for every client, and having a kit for this, again, is really important. You may not realize that somebody's changed an address or a bank until they come in for their annual review. And being able to pull those forms very easily from your kit keeps the meeting flowing. And so prepare some of these things that you might not know you're going to need until they get there. So having that together is very helpful. Your 45-day follow-up after a plan. Have an agenda for that. Have an appointment confirmation script for it, any online resources that they need to use after you've delivered the plan. You might want to have their first statements after they've transferred the assets to you to review with them so that they can get used to reading those new statements. You might talk to them about how they access their cash if they need it. And maybe, again, the next meeting card. For established client meetings, some of the things you might want to consider including, besides the appointment confirmation script and agenda, is what does an investment review look like? What do you provide to a client during an investment review so you don't forget something that you like to share? The client experience roadmap that you probably have updated, or tell them what's next. And then maybe an invitation to an educational event that would be beneficial for them. So in this lesson, you learned about how to create a consistent process and how to prepare for it, how you could set those processes up in your own office, why a team is going to be really valuable for preparing these materials, and how a consistent process helps your client tell their story. Thank you.